The meeting hall on Nexus Prime had never seen anything like it. Representatives from both branches of humanity sat alongside delegates from dozens of alien species, all trying to understand what the galaxy had become and what it might yet become. Elder Ko Sung-min studied the faces around the table. Ancient humans who remembered ruling the stars, natural-born humans who had grown up as equals among aliens, and the alien species themselves, no longer sure whether they were children or adults. In this cosmic family, we need to start with truth, she said quietly. Her voice carried the weight of 200,000 years, but also the gentle authority of someone who had learned wisdom through loss. All of us have been living with lies. General Lim Kyung-soo shifted in his chair, his ancient eyes still hard with the certainty of superior experience. The only lie is pretending that experience doesn't matter, that wisdom gained over millennia is worth no more than the idealism of youth. Is it idealism? Asked Commander Kim Tae-ho. Or is it growth? The question struck at the heart of everything. Around the table, beings who had lived for vastly different lengths of time tried to understand what growth meant across the span of centuries and millennia. Dr. Park Hae-won activated a holographic display showing genetic and cultural analysis of the changes that had occurred during humanity's long sleep. The modifications made to Earthborn humans weren't just about forgetting the past, she explained. They were about developing new capacities, enhanced empathy, reduced hierarchical thinking, stronger cooperative instincts. Weaknesses, muttered General Lim. Are they? Asked Colonel Park Jun-ho, the young officer who had become a bridge between the two branches of humanity. In the last month, natural-born humans have made more progress in galactic relations than ancient humans achieved in their last 1,000 years of rule. The accusation hung in the air. It was true that the final centuries of the ancient human empire had seen increasing isolation, growing distance between humans and the species they guided. It was, in fact, that very isolation that had led to the decision to attempt the long sleep experiment. Admiral Choi Byung-ho spoke for the first time since the session began. The boy has a point. We ruled, but did we truly lead? We guided, but did we truly teach? His words caused a stir among the ancient humans. Choi had been one of the architects of the original empire, his voice carrying enormous weight among the awakened elders. Look at what happened when we returned, he continued. Our first instinct was to reclaim authority, to restore the old order. We didn't ask what had been built in our absence or whether it might be better than what we left behind, the alien. Delegates had been listening in silence, but now the Thraxian representative performed a complex dance communication that their translators rendered as a mixture of sorrow and hope. The old songs remember you as teachers who departed when lessons were learned, the insectoid being communicated through movement. But some of you return as conquerors seeking to teach lessons we have already mastered. It was a gentle accusation, but it cut deep. The species that humanity had guided to intelligence were suggesting that they no longer needed guidance, at least not the kind that the ancient humans were offering. Elder Ko nodded slowly. Perhaps that is the greatest success we could have hoped for. Children who grow beyond the need for parents. But what about order? Demanded General Lim. What about preventing the chaos and conflicts that arose during our sleep? The wars, the exploitations, the near extinctions? Commander Kim looked at the alien delegates around the table. How many species here have been involved in wars during the last 1,000 years? Hands, appendages, and energy fields rose around the table. Nearly every species represented had participated in some form of conflict during humanity's absence. And how many of those wars ended in total extinction of either side? The hands came down. No species at the table had been completely destroyed by warfare, though several had come close. That's not order, Kim continued. That's growth. Learning. To fight without destroying each other completely. Learning to compete without eliminating the competition. Dr. Han Soo-young had been analyzing the cultural development patterns of the alien species during humanity's absence. Her findings painted a remarkable picture of civilizational evolution. Every major species has developed internal conflict resolution mechanisms, she reported. The Vorthak learned to harmonize opposing viewpoints into shared solutions. The Eldari developed consensus-building techniques that prevent destructive factionalism. The Nexari created adaptive governance systems that respond to changing needs. These are skills that the ancient human empire never fully developed, admitted Admiral Choi. We maintained order through superior force and wisdom. They learned to maintain order through cooperation and adaptation. The admission sent shockwaves through the ancient human delegation. One of their greatest leaders was acknowledging that the species they had guided had surpassed their teachers in crucial areas, but it was Counselor O'Miran who spoke the words that changed everything. What if that was always the plan? She activated displays showing the original planning documents for the long sleep, records that only a few of the most senior ancient humans had ever seen. The genetic modifications, the cultural seeding, the technological limitations we imposed on ourselves. None of it was about creating humans who would eventually reclaim control. It was about creating humans who would choose not to. The documents were clear. The original planners hadn't expected the ancient humans to eventually resume leadership. They had expected the natural-born humans to become something that the ancient humans could learn from. We were designed to stagnate, O continued, to remain as we were, preserving knowledge but not growing, while our other selves developed new ways of thinking and being. General Lim stared at the documents with growing horror. You're saying we were never meant to lead again? That we were intended to become obsolete? Not obsolete, said Elder Ko gently. Teachers, advisors, repositories of knowledge and experience, but not rulers. The Vorthak representative's crystal form resonated with harmonics of understanding. Like the old songs say, star-seeders who plant and then step back to let the garden grow. It was a beautiful metaphor, but it raised the hardest question of all. What happened to gardeners when the garden no longer needed tending? Lieutenant Park Jun-ho, the youngest human in the room, spoke with the certainty that only youth can possess. Maybe the gardeners become part of the garden. The room fell silent. The idea was radical. Instead of ancient humans resuming control, or natural-born humans rejecting their heritage, what if both branches worked together as equals? The ancient humans have knowledge and experience that could benefit everyone, Park continued. But the natural-born humans and alien species have developed new approaches to cooperation and growth. Instead of choosing between them, why not combine them? Elder Ko smiled with genuine warmth. From the mouths of babes comes wisdom, but General Lim was not convinced. Pretty words, he said harshly. But what about practical matters? Who makes decisions? Who maintains order? Who prevents the chaos that comes from too many voices trying to speak at once? Maybe, suggested Commander Kim, that's exactly what we need to figure out together. The next several hours were unlike anything in galactic history. Ancient humans with millennia of experience worked alongside natural-born humans with fresh perspectives and alien species with entirely different approaches to problem-solving. They designed a new form of galactic governance that incorporated elements from all three groups. The Thraxians contributed their hive-mind consensus techniques. The Vorthak offered their harmonic resolution methods. The Eldari shared their long-term planning strategies. Ancient humans provided historical context and technical knowledge. Natural-born humans offered adaptive flexibility and empathetic mediation. What emerged was not a government or an empire, but something entirely new. A collaborative network where different species and groups contributed their strengths while addressing their weaknesses through partnership. We'll call it the Galactic Synthesis, announced Ambassador Lee Sora. Not rule by one species over others, but cooperation among all species with each other. The reaction was immediate and intense. Some ancient humans saw it as abandonment of their rightful role. Some alien species feared it was a trick to establish human dominance. Some natural-born humans worried they would be overshadowed by their more experienced ancestors. But Elder Ko looked around the room at the mixture of ancient wisdom, youthful energy, and alien innovation, and saw something that hadn't existed in the galaxy for 200,000 years, genuine hope. There will be problems, she admitted. Conflicts between different approaches, misunderstandings between different perspectives, Mistakes as we learn to work together. But that's what growth looks like, added Commander Kim. Not the absence of problems, but learning to solve them together. The formal signing of the Synthesis Accords took place 3 months later, with representatives from both branches of humanity and 47 alien species. The ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy, watched by billions of beings trying to understand what their future might hold. General Lim had eventually agreed to support the synthesis, though his speech at the signing ceremony showed he still had reservations. I have seen empires rise. The first shots of what historians would later call the Recognition War were fired, not by human or alien fleets but by fear itself. General Lim Kyung-soo stood on the bridge of the ancient human dreadnought Star's Dominion, watching alien ships flee from his approach. The vessel was 200,000 years old, but more advanced than anything the current galaxy possessed. Its weapons could crack planets, its shields could withstand the output of entire star systems, and its mere presence caused panic wherever it appeared. The Nexari coalition has withdrawn from the disputed systems, reported his aide, Colonel Park Jun-ho. They're consolidating their forces at their core worlds. Lim nodded with satisfaction. As they should. The children have forgotten their place, but they still remember enough to fear their betters. But Colonel Park wasn't comfortable with what he was seeing. The young officer had been born on Earth just 25 years ago, one of the natural-born, humans who had grown up believing his species was young and striving. The reality of humanity's ancient dominance still felt wrong to him. Sir, the alien fleets aren't just retreating. They're preparing defensive positions around civilian populations. They think we're coming to conquer them, aren't we? Asked Lim. The galaxy fell into chaos during our sleep. Wars, exploitation, species driving themselves to extinction while we slept. Clearly the children need guidance again. Park looked around the bridge at the other ancient humans, beings who had been alive when humanity ruled the stars. Their faces showed the same certainty, the same comfortable assumption of superiority that had once made them gods to younger species. But he had grown up in a different world, where humanity struggled and learned and made mistakes. Where other species were partners and equals, not wayward children. Meanwhile, in the inner systems, Counselor Oh Mi-ran was trying to hold together a coalition of ancient humans who disagreed with Lim's aggressive approach. She had awakened from a facility near Earth and had spent weeks observing modern human civilization before making her presence known. The natural-born humans have achieved something remarkable, she argued at a gathering of awakened elders. They've created a society based on cooperation rather than dominance. This is what we hoped they would become. And look where it got them, scoffed General Lim's voice through the communication system. Rejected by their own children, mocked, as primitives denied their rightful place in galactic society. Because they chose not to claim that place by force, Oh Mi-ran replied. They tried diplomacy first, reasoning mutual benefit. Those were options we rarely considered in the old days. The debate was tearing apart the awakening human community. Some, like General Lim, saw the current galaxy as proof that the younger species needed firm guidance. Others, like Counselor Oh, believed that the experiment of the long sleep had succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. Admiral Choi Byung-ho found himself caught between the two factions. As a military leader, he understood Lim's frustration with the chaos and inefficiency of galactic politics. But as someone who had helped plan the long sleep, he also understood that the point had been to allow natural development, not to resume control when it became inconvenient. The crisis deepened when the Vorthak coalition launched a massive assault on human space. The attack came without warning, 300 ships striking at human colonies and research stations simultaneously. It was the largest military action in galactic history, a desperate attempt by the crystal beings to prevent humanity from reclaiming worlds that contained evidence of ancient human presence. The battle should have been a massacre. The alien ships outnumbered human forces 10-1, and they were attacking civilian targets that had minimal defenses. Instead, it became a demonstration of just how far apart the two branches of humanity had grown. General Lim's response was swift and devastating. The Star's Dominion and her sister ships emerged from faster-than-light travel directly behind the attacking fleet. Their weapons, designed to fight wars on a galactic scale, vaporized entire squadrons with single shots. Surrender immediately. Lim broadcast on all frequencies, or face the consequences of attacking your betters. But the Vorthak coalition had prepared for this moment. They had studied every scrap of information about ancient human technology, and had developed tactics specifically to fight a technologically superior opponent. Their ships scattered in all directions, using speed and numbers to avoid the ancient, human weapons. They couldn't win a direct fight, but they could make victory expensive. And their real target wasn't the human warships. It was the civilian colonies that the humans would have to protect. The battle spread across multiple star systems as Vorthak raiders struck at human settlements, while their main fleet kept the ancient human ships busy. It was exactly the kind of asymmetric warfare that the old human empire had never had to face. Enemies who were willing to accept massive losses to achieve their goals. And then Commander Kim Tae-ho made the decision that changed everything. All human forces, stand down. He broadcast on military frequencies. I repeat, all human forces are ordered to cease offensive operations immediately. The order caused chaos in human ranks. Ancient human commanders couldn't believe that a natural-born human was giving orders to beings who had been alive when his ancestors were learning to use tools. You have no authority here, child, General Lim snarled over the communication channel. We are reclaiming what was always ours. No, Kim replied calmly. You're proving that the aliens were right to fear us. Kim's next action shocked everyone. Instead of calling for military reinforcements, he broadcast a message to the Vorthak coalition on open frequencies. This is Commander Kim Tae-ho of Earth Defense Command. I'm requesting an immediate ceasefire so we can discuss terms for ending this conflict. The response from the Vorthak commander was harsh and desperate. There can be no terms while ancient humans live to reclaim the galaxy. Then it's good that we're not ancient humans, Kim replied. We're the same species they chose to become, and we choose peace. What happened next became known as the gesture of recognition. Kim ordered all natural-born human forces to withdraw to defensive positions around their colonies and made no attempt to pursue the retreating Vorthak forces. More importantly, he opened secure channels to alien governments and made an offer that no one had expected. The awakening humans claim authority over the galaxy based on their ancient role as guidance givers, he announced. But humanity, both ancient and modern, recognizes that 200,000 years of development has changed everything. We formally renounce any claim to rule over species that have grown beyond the need for our guidance. The announcement sent shockwaves through both human and alien space. Ancient humans were furious at what they saw as a betrayal of their rightful position. Alien species were confused by an offer they had never expected to receive. But the most dramatic reaction came from within the human forces themselves. Colonel Park Jun-ho was on the bridge when Kim's announcement reached General Lim's fleet. He watched the ancient human officers react with shock and anger to what they saw as capitulation to inferior beings. This is intolerable, Lim declared. The natural-born humans have been contaminated by alien influence. They've forgotten what it means to be human. Have they? Asked Park quietly. Or have they learned something we forgot? The young officer had been thinking about the genetic modifications that the ancient humans had made to their earthbound descendants. The changes weren't just about memory. They were about fundamental approaches to dealing with other intelligent beings. Sir, what if this is exactly what the original planners intended? What if the point wasn't to create humans who would eventually reclaim dominance, but to create humans who would choose not to? General Lim turned to face the young officer with ancient eyes that held no patience for such ideas. 200,000 years of experience versus 25 years of naive idealism. Which do you think carries more weight? Experience can become a trap, Park replied, thinking of lessons learned at the academy about military history. Sometimes the young see solutions that the experienced have forgotten are possible. The tension on the bridge was thick enough to cut. Ancient humans who had lived through the glory days of Galactic Empire faced off against natural-born humans who had grown up believing in equality and cooperation. The confrontation was interrupted by reports from the battlefield. While they had been arguing, the natural-born human forces had done something unprecedented. They had begun rescuing Vorthak survivors from damaged ships. "They're what?" Lim demanded. "Our forces are providing medical aid and safe passage to alien survivors," reported the communications officer. The Vorthak are confused by this behavior. On the main display, they could see human rescue ships moving between the wreckage of the battle, pulling injured Vorthak from their crystal ships and providing emergency care. The sight of humans who had just been in combat now risking their lives to save their enemies was shocking to observers from both sides. The Vorthak coalition's response was immediate and telling. Their ships stopped firing and began coordinating with human rescue efforts. Newbar. Word of Elder Ko Sung-min's awakening spread through human space like wildfire. Within days, every major news network was broadcasting the impossible story. Humanity was not young. They were the oldest intelligence in the galaxy, the species that had guided all others to sapience before choosing to sleep and let their descendants develop naturally. The reaction from alien governments was swift and panicked. Ambassador Lee So-ra watched the emergency session of the Galactic Council from her quarters on Nexus Prime. The aliens who had mocked humanity just weeks before were now shouting at each other in languages that the translation systems could barely keep up with. "This is clearly human propaganda," declared the Vorthak representative, his crystal body ringing with agitation. "Desperate lies from a species that cannot accept their primitive status." But the Eldari delegate was quieter, his silver skin flickering with patterns that Lee had learned indicated deep anxiety. "The evidence they present. Some of our oldest archives contain references that might support their claims." "Might?" The Nexari clicked angrily. "The foundation stones of our first cities bear markings that match human design principles. We have known this for millennia but chose to interpret them as convergent evolution." Lee smiled grimly. The cracks in their unified denial were already showing. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, more ancient humans were awakening from the long sleep. Each awakening site revealed the same story: vast installations where thousands of the original human civilization had placed themselves in suspended animation, waiting for their descendants to develop enough to discover them. Admiral Choi Byung-ho emerged from a facility hidden in an asteroid field that the aliens had declared forbidden space. Unlike Elder Ko's gentle awakening, the Admiral came online, with military precision, immediately taking stock of available resources and strategic positions. "Report," he commanded as soon as the awakening process was complete. Dr. Han Soo-young, who had joined the growing team of researchers studying the awakening sites, briefed him on the current situation. "The natural-born humans have achieved faster-than-light travel and colonized 47 star systems. They made contact with alien species and were rejected from the Galactic Council." Choi nodded. "Expected. The children always fear their parents' return. What about our installations?" "We've located 47 active sites so far. Estimated population in suspended animation, over 2 million individuals." The Admiral studied displays showing the current state of the galaxy. The species that had mocked humanity controlled vast territories and commanded fleets that outnumbered current human forces by hundreds to one. But the technology available to the awakening humans made such numerical advantages irrelevant. "Sir," Han continued carefully, "there's something else. Some of the awakening humans are angry about what's happened. They feel the natural-born humans have been insulted and that the alien species have overstepped their bounds." Choi's expression darkened. "Who?" "General Lim Kyung-soo has awakened 3 sites in the Outer Rim. He's been calling the alien species ungrateful children and suggesting that humanity should reclaim their rightful place as galactic rulers." The Admiral was silent for a long moment. This had always been the risk, that the awakening humans would see the galaxy's development during their sleep as a betrayal rather than a success. On Earth, the revelation of humanity's true nature had caused both celebration and confusion. Commander Kim Tae-ho found himself at the center of a media storm, as reporters demanded to know how humanity would respond to the discovery that they were the galaxy's elder species. "We're still processing this information," he told the press. Conference. Our priority is understanding what this means for human relationships with other species. But privately, Kim was dealing with more immediate concerns. Reports were coming in of human ships being turned away from alien space, of trade agreements being suddenly canceled, and of increasing military activity along the borders of human territory. The aliens were scared, and scared people made dangerous decisions. Dr. Park Hae-won was working around the clock to document the awakening sites and compile evidence of humanity's ancient presence throughout the galaxy. What she was finding painted a picture of influence so vast that it changed everything about galactic history. Every major species shows signs of human genetic manipulation in their early development, she reported to a gathering of Earth's scientific leadership. Not forced evolution, but careful guidance that helped them develop their natural potentials. She showed genetic analysis of dozens of species. In each case, there were markers that indicated intervention by an outside intelligence, intervention that had enhanced beneficial traits while suppressing those that might have led to self-destruction. The Thraxians' perfect balance of individual intelligence and hive coordination, that's not natural evolution. Someone helped them achieve that balance. The Vorthak's ability to communicate through crystal resonance, their early ancestors couldn't do that until someone helped them develop the necessary neural pathways. The implications were staggering. Not only had humans guided these species to intelligence, but they had shaped the very nature of that intelligence to create the diverse, mostly peaceful galactic community that existed today. Meanwhile, Kwon Jae-sung was conducting secret meetings with alien government representatives. What he was learning confirmed humanity's worst fears about alien reactions to the truth. They're terrified, he reported to Commander Kim. The Eldari admit that their entire technological base comes from reverse engineering human devices they found in their early history. The Nexari's mastery of metallurgy is based on human techniques they discovered in ancient ruins. Every major species has built their civilization on foundations left behind by sleeping humans. The meeting had taken place on a neutral station, in disputed space with representatives from 12 different alien species. Kwon had expected denial or anger, but what he found was something far more disturbing, genuine fear. They're not afraid of human technology, Kwon continued. They're afraid of human judgment. They think we'll take away everything they've built because it was originally ours. The Eldari representative at the meeting had summed up their fears perfectly. If the humans reclaim their inheritance, what becomes of us? Do we return to the primitive state they found us in? Do we become their servants again? It was a fear that General Lim Kyung-soo was more than happy to exploit. Reports reached Earth of his activities in the Outer Rim. He had awakened 3 more sites and was using the advanced humans there to begin construction of new ships and weapons. His public broadcasts were reaching both human and alien space. The children have grown disobedient, he declared in one transmission. They have forgotten their place and show no gratitude for the gifts they were given. Perhaps it is time for the parents to resume their proper role. His words sent shockwaves through the galactic community. Here was an ancient human openly threatening to reclaim dominance over the species that had developed during humanity's absence. But the most shocking moment came when the Vorthak coalition launched a preemptive strike against one of the human archaeological sites. Admiral Choi received the report while reviewing awakening schedules at his command post. 12 Vorthak heavy cruisers attacked the research site at coordinates 847221 Alpha. They attempted to destroy the evidence of ancient human presence. Casualties? Asked Choi. None. The site's automated defenses activated, all 12 attacking. Ships were disabled, and their crews captured. The automated defenses of a 200,000-year-old human installation had effortlessly defeated a modern alien battle fleet. The technology gap was even larger than anyone had imagined. When news of the attack reached Earth, the reaction was immediate and intense. The same aliens who had mocked humanity as primitive had tried to destroy evidence of human heritage. It was an act of war by any definition, but it was Commander Kim's response that surprised everyone. The attack on our archaeological site was an act of aggression, he announced. However, we understand that it came from fear rather than malice. We are prepared to accept the surrender of the attacking vessels and return their crews unharmed. General Lim's reaction was explosive. Surrender? They attack us and you speak of returning their crews? This weakness is exactly why the galaxy fell into chaos during our sleep. The division between ancient and modern humans was becoming a crisis. The awakening humans had the technology and knowledge to dominate the galaxy, but the Earthborn humans had something their ancestors had lost: the ability to see other species as equals rather than children to be guided. Dr. Han Su-young had been studying the genetic modifications that the ancient humans had made to their earthbound descendants. What she found explained the fundamental difference in perspective. They didn't just erase our memories of the ancient civilization, she explained to a joint meeting of ancient and modern human leaders. They enhanced our capacity for empathy and reduced our tendency toward hierarchical thinking. We're literally designed to see other beings as equals. Elder Ko nodded approvingly. That was intentional. We had become too comfortable with our superiority. The modifications were meant to ensure that when we reunited, we would have learned to value cooperation over domination. But General Lim rejected this interpretation. They made us weak, soft, unable. The ancient structure hung in space like a sleeping giant. As the horizon's edge docked with what appeared to be a reception bay, Dr. Park Hae-won felt as if she was stepping into a tomb that had been sealed for centuries beyond counting. The airlock cycled and breathable atmosphere flowed into their suits. Someone had maintained life support in this place for 200,000 years. Gravity's at Earth normal, reported Captain Jang Yu-jin as they stepped into the structure. Whoever built this designed it for humans. The corridors were vast, clearly built to accommodate large numbers of people. Emergency lighting flickered on as they walked, responding to their presence with systems that still functioned after millennia. Dr. Bayek Minho ran his scanner over the walls, marveling at materials that showed no signs of age despite their impossible antiquity. The construction is incredible, he said. These materials should have degraded long ago, but they're still perfect. Shin Dal-soo was connecting his equipment to what appeared to be data ports built into the walls. I'm getting readings from computer systems. They're still active, running on some kind of power source I can't identify. As they moved deeper into the structure, they began to find signs that this place had been inhabited recently. In geological terms, rooms that showed signs of use, equipment that appeared to be in standby mode rather than abandoned, and most unsettling of all, areas that seemed to be designed for sleep. Look at this, called Park from a side corridor. She had found what could only be described as sleeping chambers. Thousands of them arranged in neat rows, each one designed to keep a human being alive for extended periods. Most of the chambers were empty, but some still contained sleeping figures. Captain Jang checked her scanner. They're alive. Somehow they're still alive. The team approached the nearest occupied chamber. Inside lay a woman who appeared to be in her 50s, her black hair streaked with silver, her face peaceful in sleep. The chamber's displays showed vital signs that indicated she was healthy and could be awakened. We need to think about this carefully, said Park. If we wake her up, we might be disturbing something that was meant to stay undisturbed. But she might have answers, argued Beck. She could explain all of this. Park looked around at the thousands of sleeping chambers. How many people were here? How long had they been asleep? And why? Do it, she decided. But slowly, let the chamber wake her naturally. The awakening process took nearly an hour. The woman's vital signs gradually shifted from deep sleep to normal consciousness. Her eyes opened slowly, and she looked around with the confusion of someone waking from a very long nap. When she saw the research team standing around her chamber, her eyes widened. She spoke in a language that their translators couldn't identify, but the rhythm and cadence sounded almost familiar. Shin quickly connected his language analysis software to the translation systems. After a few minutes of sampling her speech, the computer began providing rough translations. "Who are you?" the woman was saying. "Why do you wake me? Is it time?" Time for what? Asked Park gently. The woman sat up slowly, studying the team with sharp, intelligent eyes. She spoke again, and this time the translation was clearer. You are the children, she said with growing excitement. The natural born. You have returned to wake us. Children? Asked Captain Zhang. We're human, just like you. The woman laughed, a sound filled with joy and relief. Yes, you are human. But you are the human we chose to become. I am Elder Ko Sung-min, and I have been sleeping for... She paused, checking displays on the chamber. 180,000 years. The team exchanged shocked glances. Even with all their discoveries, the reality of meeting someone who had been alive for that long was overwhelming. Elder Ko stepped out of the chamber with steady movements that belied her impossibly advanced age. Tell me, she said, what year is it by Earth reckoning? Have the children learned to reach the stars? We've had faster-than-light travel for 200 years, Park replied. We've colonized dozens of worlds and made contact with alien species. Ko nodded approvingly. Good. The plan worked better than we dared hope. What plan? Asked Bayek urgently. Elder Ko looked at them with ancient eyes that held both sadness and pride. Come, I will show you the truth of what humanity was, and why we chose to sleep while you grew. She led them deeper into the structure to what appeared to be a command center. The displays that activated at her touch showed star charts, historical records, and data that painted a picture of galactic civilization that took their breath away. 200,000 years ago, Ko began, humanity was not the young species you believe yourselves to be. We were the oldest intelligence in this galaxy. We had mastered space travel, energy manipulation, and even genetic engineering. Our ships sailed between stars when most of the species you've met were still learning to make fire. The displays showed images of vast human fleets, cities that spanned entire planets, and technology that made current human achievements look primitive. We guided the development of intelligence across hundreds of worlds, Ko continued. We taught the Vorthok to sing with crystal harmonics. We helped the Eldari develop their light manipulation abilities. We showed the Nexari how to build with living metal. Every species you've encountered owes their initial spark of sapience to humanity. Park felt as if the universe was shifting around her. But why don't they remember? Why don't we remember? Ko's expression grew solemn. Because we faced a choice that would define the future of the galaxy. We could continue as we were, advanced beyond measure but isolated by our own superiority. Or we could try something that had never been attempted. What did you choose? Asked Captain Zhang. We chose to step back, Ko replied. To let our children grow without our direct guidance. But more than that, we chose to grow alongside them. She activated another display that showed genetic data and historical records. We modified our own evolution, creating a branch of humanity that would develop naturally, without the burden of our ancient knowledge. These new humans, your ancestors, were settled on Earth with all memory of our great civilization erased. You created us? Asked Shin, his voice barely audible. Not created, Ko corrected gently. We gave ourselves the chance to become you. The humans on Earth are not our children. They are us, allowed to grow in a different direction. You are what we chose to become. The implications were staggering. The young humans of Earth weren't a separate species. They were the descendants of the galaxy's most ancient civilization, deliberately modified to develop naturally. But why the long sleep? Asked Park. Why didn't you just guide us from a distance? Ko's face showed deep pain. Because we had become something that frightened even ourselves. Our technology was so advanced, our knowledge so vast, that we had stopped growing. We had become perfect, and perfection is just another word for death. She showed them records of the ancient human civilization in its final days. Despite their incredible achievements, they had become stagnant, unchanging, locked into patterns of thought and behavior that had served them for millennia, but no longer allowed for growth. The long sleep was not just waiting, Ko explained. It was a form of imposed limitation. We agreed to stop our own development, to remain as we were, so that when you, our other selves, had grown in different directions, we could learn from what you had become. Dr. Bayek was studying the genetic data. The modifications you made to our ancestors, they weren't just about erasing memory, were they? Ko smiled proudly. You see clearly. No, we also enhanced certain qualities that we had lost. The capacity for rapid change, for emotional growth, for seeing possibilities that experience had taught us to dismiss. We gave you the ability to remain young in ways that matter. But what about the other species? Asked Captain Zhang. Do they know the truth? Ko's expression hardened. Some remember fragments. Their oldest legends speak of first ones or star-seeders who gave them intelligence and then vanished. But as they developed their own civilizations, many found it more comfortable to believe they had always been independent. She activated displays showing alien historical records and cultural myths. Time and again, stories appeared of ancient benefactors who had guided early development before disappearing. The Vorthak leadership knows, Ko said. Their harmonic libraries contain songs from the earliest days that speak of human teachers. The Eldari have records of the technology we shared with them. Many species have some knowledge, but they prefer to think of it as mythology rather than history, because acknowledging the truth would mean accepting that they're not the elder species they claim to be, Park realized. Exactly. It's easier to mock humanity as young than to admit that everything they are began with human guidance, under B. Yoon Ji-hee had been working behind the scenes for weeks, following up on the research team's discoveries by investigating alien government responses to questions about ancient history. Her findings painted a picture of systematic suppression of information. I've found evidence that several alien governments have active policies to discourage investigation into their earliest periods, she reported to Commander Kim Tae-ho. They've classified certain archaeological sites as culturally sensitive and forbidden, ASU. Dr. Park Hae-won stared at the data scrolling across her screen, her coffee growing cold as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing. 3 weeks had passed since the humiliation at the Galactic Council, and she hadn't been able to stop thinking about the aliens' strange reactions to her questions about their history. The research lab on Luna Station buzzed with activity. Dr. Bayek. Minho hunched over ancient text translations while Shin Dalsu ran complex data analysis programs that made the computers work so hard they needed extra cooling. Captain Zhang Yujin had arrived that morning with new archaeological data from the outer colonies. This doesn't make sense, Park said, rubbing her tired eyes. Look at this pattern. She pulled up a holographic display showing timeline data from 47 alien species. Each line showed the same strange gap, detailed records going back maybe 50 or 60,000 years, then nothing reliable beyond that point. Beck looked up from his work. It's like they all started keeping records at the same time, but that's impossible. Different species develop writing and record-keeping at different rates. Unless, said Shin quietly, something happened to make them all start over at the same time. The room fell silent. The idea was disturbing. What kind of event could affect dozens of species across the galaxy simultaneously? Captain Zhang cleared her throat. Speaking of strange things, I brought something from Mars that you need to see. She activated a new hologram showing photographs from the Martian archaeological site. The images showed ruins buried deep beneath the human colonies, structures that clearly weren't natural formations. We found these yesterday, Zhang explained. The dating is wrong, though. Our equipment says they're over 100,000 years old, but look at the architecture. Park leaned forward, studying the ruins. The walls had clean geometric lines, doorways sized for human proportions, and decorative patterns that reminded her of ancient Earth cultures. But humans hadn't reached Mars until 300 years ago. Could be convergent evolution, suggested Beck, though he sounded doubtful. Similar environments producing similar architectural solutions. Shin was already running analysis programs. I'm comparing these structures to known human architecture throughout history. The similarities are significant, especially to some of the oldest human ruins on Earth. How old are we talking? Asked Park. The oldest human structures we know about are maybe 12,000 years old, Shin replied. But these Mars ruins predate them by almost 90,000 years. Park felt a chill that had nothing to do with the lab's air conditioning. Show me the Earth data again. The hologram shifted to display human archaeological sites. Park had seen this data hundreds of times, but now she was looking for something different. The earliest human civilizations appeared around 10,000 years ago, but there were always hints of something older. Strange megalithic structures that didn't fit with known human development. Tools and artifacts that seemed too advanced for their supposed age. Shin, run a search through all our databases. Look for anything that mentions prehistoric human structures, unusual dating, or artifacts that don't fit the standard timeline. The computer systems hummed for several minutes. When the results appeared, Park's breath caught in her throat. There are references going back centuries, Shin reported. Explorers and archaeologists finding human-like structures on worlds that humans had never visited. Most of these reports were dismissed as misidentification or contamination from later human presence. Captain Jiang was studying the data with a military officer's eye for patterns. These locations, they're scattered across human space and beyond. Some are on worlds that aliens now claim as their own territory. We need to see these sites, Park said firmly. All of them. That could be dangerous, Jiang warned. Some of these locations are in alien space. They might not appreciate human archaeologists poking around their territory. Park looked at her team. 3 weeks ago, they had been confident in humanity's place in the universe. Young but growing, learning from elder species who had mastered the galaxy long before humans discovered fire. Now that certainty was crumbling. We can't just ignore this, she said. If there's evidence that humans have been in space far longer than anyone thinks, we need to know. The next few weeks passed in a blur of travel and discovery. Captain Jiang's ship, the Horizon's Edge, carried the research team from site to site. Each location told the same impossible story. On an asteroid in the belt between Mars and Jupiter, they found a mining facility that showed clear signs of human construction, but dated back over 150,000 years. The tools were primitive by current standards, but far more advanced than anything humans should have possessed that long ago. On Europa, beneath kilometers of ice, they discovered what could only be described as a human research station. The architecture was unmistakably human, but the age was impossible, nearly 200,000 years old. Most disturbing of all was what they found in alien space. Captain Jiang had used her military contacts to gain access to archaeological data from worlds controlled by other species. Time and again, they found references to structures that predated the aliens' own settlements, structures that bore human characteristics. Look at this, Bach said, pulling up images from a Vorthak world. They built their crystal cities on top of these ruins. The foundation stones are clearly cut and fitted in human style, but they're older than anything in the Vorthak historical record. Shin had been running analysis on the alien databases they'd accessed. His findings were even more disturbing. I've found similar patterns on 43 different worlds, he reported. In every case, there are ancient ruins beneath alien settlements. Ruins that show human construction techniques but predate known human space travel by hundreds of thousands of years. Park stared at the evidence mounting on their screens. The implications were staggering. Either there had been an advanced human civilization that had spread across the galaxy hundreds of millennia ago, or someone was playing an incredibly elaborate hoax. There's something else, Shin continued, his voice barely above a whisper. I found references in some of the oldest alien texts. They don't call them human ruins, they call them first builder sites or Starwalker remnants. The descriptions match what we're finding. The team worked in silence for a while, each trying to process what they were discovering. Finally, Captain Jiang spoke up. I've been thinking about those alien reactions at the council meeting. They weren't just dismissive, they were defensive. Like they were hiding something. But what could they be hiding, asked Beck. And why? Park had been wondering the same thing. What reason would dozens of different species have for concealing evidence of ancient human presence in the galaxy? Maybe, she said slowly. They're not the elder species they claim to be. The idea hung in the air like a challenge to everything. They thought they knew about galactic history. If the aliens weren't ancient elders, if humans had actually been in space far longer than anyone believed, then everything about humanity's place in the universe would need to be reconsidered. We need more evidence, Park decided. Real proof, not just suspicious dating and architectural similarities. That's when Captain Zhang remembered the Forbidden Zone. There's a region of space that all the alien species avoid, she said. They call it the Forbidden Zone, claim it's dangerous because of gravitational anomalies and radiation. But my scans show it's actually quite stable. I always wondered why they really stay away from it. Park felt excitement building in her chest. How far is it? 3 days' travel at maximum speed. But if we're caught there, the aliens will consider it an act of aggression. Then we'd better not get caught, Park said firmly. The journey to the Forbidden Zone took them far from any established shipping lanes. As they approached the coordinates, their sensors began picking up something massive. There's a structure ahead, reported Zhang from the bridge. It's big, really big. When they got close enough for visual confirmation, the entire crew fell silent. Floating in the empty space around a dead star was a structure that dwarfed anything humans had ever built. It stretched for kilometers in every direction, clearly artificial but obviously ancient, and it was unmistakably human in design. My God, whispered Beck. It's like a city in space. More than that, said Shin, studying the sensor readings. It's a shipyard. Look at these structures. They're designed for building and maintaining spacecraft. Park stared at the massive construction floating before them. The architecture was human, but the scale was beyond anything modern humanity could conceive. Whoever had built this had possessed technology and resources that made current human civilization look primitive. How old is it? She asked. Shin ran dating scans on the exterior materials. When the results came back, his face went pale. 200,000 years, he whispered. Give or take a few millennia. They had found proof that humans had not only reached space hundreds of thousands of years ago, they had built on a scale that suggested a galactic civilization. The question now was what had happened to that civilization, and why no one seemed to remember it. As they prepared to dock with the ancient structure, Park realized that everything the aliens had told them about being young and primitive might be the biggest lie in galactic history. Commander Kim Tae-ho stood in the Great Hall of Nexus Prime, watching alien beings fill the massive chamber. The space station hung in the void between stars, home to the Galactic Council where 47 different species made decisions for half the galaxy. Today, they would decide if humans deserved a seat at their table. The aliens were nothing like the movies back on Earth had shown. The Vorthak looked like living crystals that sang when they spoke. The Marathi were clouds of gas held together by energy fields. The Eldari stood 12 feet tall with silver skin that seemed to glow. Each species was stranger than the last, and all of them were looking at the three humans with what could only be called amusement. Dr. Park Hae-won adjusted her notes nervously. She had studied alien cultures for 20 years, but being here, in person, was different. The weight of their stares made her feel small. Beside her, Ambassador Lee Sora remained calm, her diplomatic training keeping her face neutral despite the whispers and clicking sounds that filled the air. The humans wished to speak, announced the council speaker, a massive creature that looked like a walking tree. Its voice boomed through the chamber, and several species made sounds that Kim Tae-ho suspected were laughter. Kim stepped forward to the speaking platform. The chamber fell silent except for the humming of the Marathi. He had rehearsed this speech 100 times, but now the words felt heavy in his mouth. Honored members of the Galactic Council, he began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. Humanity comes before you as friends, seeking to join the community of civilized worlds. We offer our knowledge, our resources, and our commitment to peace. A sharp sound interrupted him. One of the Vorthak delegates was making a noise like breaking glass, which the translator rendered as laughter. Friends, knowledge? The crystal being sang mockingly. Children playing with fire think they have mastered the elements. The Eldari delegate rose from his seat. His silver skin rippled, with patterns of light as he spoke. Humans discovered faster-than-light travel only 200 years ago. My people have sailed between stars for 50,000 years. What could infants possibly offer to adults? More laughter echoed through the chamber. A delegate from the Nexari, beings that looked like metal spiders, clicked disapprovingly. Their home system shows signs of recent nuclear warfare. They nearly destroyed themselves before they learned to reach for the stars. This is wisdom? Kim felt heat rise in his cheeks but kept his voice steady. Every species faces challenges. As they grow, humanity has learned from our mistakes. We have unified our world and eliminated war among our people. For 50 years, scoffed another voice. This came from the Thraxian delegate, a being that resembled a giant mantis. My species has known peace for 30,000 years. 50 years is not even a proper nap. Dr. Park Hae-won stepped forward. Her area of expertise was alien biology and culture, and she had noticed something during their research that bothered her. If I may ask, she said politely, could you share some details about your earliest historical records? For our cultural studies, of course. The question seemed to surprise several delegates. The Eldari representative's light patterns flickered. Our earliest records? Why would that matter to your application? Human archaeologists are fascinated by ancient civilizations, Park explained. We've found traces of our own history going back over 10,000 years. Your species must have incredible archives from your tens of thousands of years of development. Something strange happened in the chamber. Several delegates exchanged glances, and the easy mockery in the air seemed to shift slightly. The Vorthak delegate's crystal body rang with a different tone when he spoke. Our records are comprehensive, he said carefully, though the earliest periods are naturally harder to verify. Park nodded thoughtfully. Of course. We've noticed that pattern. In our preliminary research, it's interesting how many species seem to have their clearest records beginning around the same time period, roughly 60,000 years ago. Almost as if there was some kind of galactic awakening. The chamber fell silent. Kim noticed that many of the alien delegates were looking uncomfortable, if such expressions could be read on their strange faces. The tree-like council speaker's branches rustled with what sounded like nervousness. Ambassador Lee So-ra sensed the shift in mood and spoke carefully. We don't mean to pry into sensitive historical matters. We're simply eager to learn from our elders. The mood in the chamber changed again, but not in a good way. The Eldari delegate's silver skin flashed with angry red patterns. Elders? You dare to question our histories? Humans are barely evolved primates who think fire is an achievement. Indeed, clicked the Nexari delegate. Perhaps you should return to your little blue world and play with your primitive toys for another 10,000 years. When you've matured, you may request an audience again. The mockery returned, stronger than before. Kim could hear the cruel amusement in the alien voices as they discussed humanity's shortcomings. They talked about humans as if they were children who had wandered into an adult conversation. Their ships are crude metal tubes with chemical rockets, laughed one delegate. They still use binary computers, sang another. They haven't even learned to modify their own genetics properly, clicked a third. Kim felt his diplomatic composure slipping. These beings were treating humanity like a joke, dismissing millions of years of evolution and thousands of years of civilization as if they meant nothing. But he forced himself to remain calm. Getting angry would only prove their point. Dr. Park Hae-won was taking notes throughout the mockery, her scientific mind cataloging the aliens' responses. Something about their reactions to her historical questions bothered her. Their discomfort had been too quick, too coordinated, almost as if they were hiding something. The council speaker finally called for order. The request for membership by the species known as humans has been reviewed, he announced. The council finds that humanity is not yet ready for full membership in the galactic community. This application is postponed indefinitely. The words hit Kim like a physical blow. 200 years of preparation, decades of building faster than light, technology, years of diplomatic contact, all dismissed in a single sentence. However, the speaker continued, humanity may maintain observer status and may reapply in 1,000 years, provided they can demonstrate significant advancement in technology and social maturity. 1,000 years. Kim thought of all the humans back on Earth and the colony worlds, waiting for news of acceptance into the galactic community. How could he tell them they had to wait 1,000 years because aliens considered them too primitive? As the session ended and aliens began filing out of the chamber, Ambassador Lee approached the Eldari delegate. Her voice was polite, but carried an edge that made Kim look at her with new respect. "Before we leave," she said, "I have one small observation. It's curious how all of your ancient species seem to have no reliable records older than 60,000 years, yet you mock us for our 10,000 years of recorded history. For beings who claim such vast experience, your memory seems remarkably short." The Eldari delegate stopped walking. His silver skin went completely dark for a moment before flashing bright white with what Kim suspected was anger or fear. "That is none of your concern, human," he said coldly. Lee smiled politely. "Of course not. Just an observation from a primitive species. We'll see ourselves out." As they walked back to their ship, Kim felt the weight of failure pressing down on him. But he also felt something else: curiosity. Dr. Park was right. There was something strange about the aliens' reactions to questions about their early history. And Ambassador Lee's parting comment had clearly struck a nerve. "What do you think?" he asked his companions as their shuttle carried them away from Nexus Prime. "I think," said Dr. Park slowly, "that we need to do more research into galactic history before we accept their judgment of humanity." Lee nodded. "Something's not right. Species that claim to be ancient elders don't get that defensive about simple, historical questions." Kim looked back at the space station growing smaller behind them. The aliens had called humanity young and primitive, mocked them as children playing with toys. But children often saw things that adults missed. Maybe it was time to start looking more carefully at what the grown-ups were trying to hide.